How you doing, bud?
Today's Springer's birthday, y'all. We ought to say happy birthday.
I might do that. Well, I'll get started. It's good to see everybody this morning. I hope everybody had a nice 4th of July weekend. Mark is out of town with 38 members here at Cross Point to Antigua. That place is close and dear to our hearts and our family's hearts. Right now they are probably, I don't know, church is supposed to start there around 9:15. Sometimes if it means 9:15, it's going to start at 10 or 10:30, just depending on when the van gets there. But I know that they're having a good time, and it's great to spend time with brothers and sisters over there. My name is Ben Campbell. I know most of you know who I am. Dr. Rushing's going to be here next week. We're talking about the classics. But before we get started, there's a young man in here that's turning 32 today. It's Springer, so I just think probably a good way to start here is let's sing Happy Birthday to Springer. Happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you, happy birthday, dear Springer, happy birthday to you. You're welcome. I shouldn't have. Happy birthday, Springer. I probably shouldn't have sang in the microphone since that's the only thing that picks up going to the. That's unfortunate, but that's all right. That's all right. I want to put a plug in for Wednesday nights here at Cross Point. The past couple. Now we're going out of town this weekend, but it will be good. This week it's talking about anxiety, depression with. Ken Delano, Karen Mann, and Rosemary Snodgrass. And those people would be very good to listen to, very good to hear from. The past 2 Wednesday nights that I've been here, is David Skidmore was the first one, and then Jeremy Swindle last week with Praise. And that's really what kind of got me thinking about what we're going to talk about today. The things that stood out in my mind was the first one was Jeremy's lesson, and just some of the songs that we sang. And the song that we sang that sticks in my mind, especially when we talk about the classics, is The Same God. So I want you to think about that for a second. We've sang it a few times here at church, but when we talk about the classics, when we talk about these Old Testament stories that really shape who we are today, I think a lot of the times we think God is not there like he was then. But the bottom line is that's just not true. Do we believe in the same God, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob, the God of Moses, the God of David, the God of all these people who stuck in there? Do we believe that he can and is doing the same work today and in our lives? I know I have a hard time believing that all the time because I read the stories and I almost make these stories like they're just fairy tales instead of real life impacting real people at that point in time. And that's hard for me. The second one was what David Skidmore, I don't know if there's a way to go. I've tried to go back and listen to it, at Crosspoint. If there's any way you can, I strongly recommend you doing that. His point was, he was talking about our kids and just how to keep developing our children and the young people's relationship with God and passing on your faith. That's what he was talking about. And I was talking about 3 questions that kids want answered, and why they leave the church is because they aren't finding these answers here. It's, who am I? I don't think that these are just questions that kids have. I think this is 100% questions that I have, almost being a 45-year-old man. And you have these doubts and these struggles and these fears all the time. And these are usually the 3 questions that come along. Who am I? Where do I fit? And why do I matter? Those 3 questions, it just kind of stood out to me because I got 2 teenage boys at home. And those 2 teenage boys, they're good kids, but I see that in their eyes and in their moments of constantly trying to figure out who they are, where do they fit in, and why do they matter. I see that at school. I see that, and I see it in my own life. And so those 2 stories that stood out, those 2 things that stood out to me on these past 2 Wednesday nights led me to the story of Moses. So we're going to start in Exodus 2 today. And we're really going to go Exodus 2 through Exodus 4. And we're going to look at how Moses began to the burning bush and before he started leading the Israelites out of Egypt. Again, I thought I knew the story of Moses a long time before I read this again multiple times this week and started going through it. But there are some things that probably have stood out to you for a long time that just jumped out and grabbed me this week. And so to do that, we have to understand, we're going to be doing a lot of reading, but I feel like to understand Moses, we have to understand why Moses was who he was when the burning bush happened. I think the only way to understand someone's story is to understand where they came from. That was one of the big things, Frank's lesson a couple weeks ago. Someone does something for a reason. It's usually because of events that happened before that changed their life, or events that happened, or their background affects who they are today. That's really important. That's why when we talk about not judging people, it's because there are incidents that people have in their past that make them who they are today. So to understand Moses, let's go back, and I'm going to summarize chapter 1. Chapter 1 just leaves us with Joseph passing away 400 years ago, and talks about how the Pharaoh changed, and the Pharaoh didn't know Joseph. So the Israelites, Joseph and his family, Jacob and his family, who came to Israel, Pharaoh didn't know who they were anymore, so he made them their slaves. He saw that they were becoming so many that he told the midwives to start throwing the male babies in the river, but the midwives are like, that's not right to do. And when he saw this number keep increasing, the midwives made a lie saying that the Israelite women were too powerful and they were getting them out before the midwives could get there. And so the population kept growing. And so he finally just said, all right, we're just going to kill all the male babies in Israel. So here comes to our story in Moses. Moses' mother. All right, so let's just start reading in chapter 2. Now a man from the house of Levi went and took as his wife a Levite woman. The woman conceived and bore a son, and when she saw that he was a fine child, she hid him for 3 months. And when she could hide him no longer, she took for him a basket made of bulrushes and dabbed it with bitumen and pitch. She put the child in it and placed it among the reeds by the riverbank. And his sister stood at a distance to know what would be done to him. Now the daughter of Pharaoh came to bathe at the river, while her young woman walked beside the river. She saw the basket among the reeds and sent her servant woman, and she took it. When she opened it, she saw the child, and behold, the baby was crying, and she took pity on him. So I want you to think about this for a second. This mother, there's 3 amazing women in this first story, by the way. 3 amazing women in this first story. The first one's the mother. The mother had a baby, and she loved this child. She was going to do anything. So she protected him for 3 months, and when she just couldn't keep him concealed, keep him hidden, she said, okay, I'm going to put him in the reeds, but I'm going to make sure the sister stays far away and just keeps up with him. Make sure that she's okay. So think about that for a second. Now, I've never been a mother, but I could only imagine the attachment, especially after birth. And I could imagine how difficult that had to be for Moses' mother, trying to protect him. And then the sister hiding there, protecting him. Because as I see Brooklyn with Evan, I know how much big sisters love their little brothers. And then Pharaoh's daughter. So let's think about this for a second. Pharaoh's daughter. Meaning Pharaoh's daughter's father was Pharaoh. What did Pharaoh just say to do? Kill all of them. Kill all the boys. So Pharaoh's daughter sees this baby and has pity on him. Okay? So now, going to verse 7. Then Moses' sister said to Pharaoh's daughter, shall I go and call you a nurse from the Hebrew women to nurse a child for you? And Pharaoh's daughter said to her, go. So the girl went and called the child's mother. And Pharaoh's daughter said to her, take this child away and nurse him for me, and I will give you your wages. So the woman took the child and nursed him. When the child grew older, she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. She named him Moses because she said, I drew him out of the water. So again, wrap your mind around this real quick. Pharaoh's daughter saw a Hebrew. A Hebrew was a what? Was a slave. Was a slave. Said the slave said to the Pharaoh's daughter, you may find a Hebrew woman to nurse him. And she said, yes, and I'll pay. So I don't actually think, I didn't get this, how actually remarkable that was. Because does Pharaoh's daughter have to pay? No. Pharaoh's daughter had compassion and love for this child and was going to take him. The mother got to nurse him for, I've read a number of different things, but it wasn't very long. And then he became Pharaoh's daughter. And I didn't know this, and shame on me. Maybe everybody else, I even asked my family, everybody else knew this. I just assumed Moses' name. I didn't remember that Moses' name was given to him by an Egyptian. I mean, this is Moses' name. His name is given to him by Pharaoh's daughter. It wasn't by his mom. So, when I say all this, Moses was taken care of. He was taken care of by those 3 women. But to understand who Moses is, I'm thinking of the kids that I have now at school who have so many different backgrounds and so many different things. So Moses is right now, and we're getting ready to read of Moses' big struggle. Moses is going to grow up as an Egyptian. He's going to receive the best of the best because he is the son right now of Pharaoh's daughter in the Egyptians' eyes. He's going to receive the best education, the best housing, the best food. He's not going to be a slave. He's going to be all of these things because he is Pharaoh's daughter. He is Pharaoh's daughter's son. So he is Pharaoh's grandson. Okay? But obviously, as we keep going, Moses knows that there's something different about him. Pharaoh's growing up in these circumstances, in these situations, but Moses, the way the next part of the story reads, Moses does not find himself to be an Egyptian. He finds himself to be something different. So let's keep reading. One day when Moses had grown up, he went out to his people and looked on their burdens. And he looked on their burdens. And he saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his people. He looked this way and that, and seeing no one, he struck down the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. When he went out the next day, behold, he saw two Hebrews were struggling together. And he said to the man in the wrong, "Why do you strike your companion?" He answered, "Who made you a prince and a judge over us? Do you mean to kill me as you killed the Egyptian?" Then Moses was afraid and thought, "Surely the thing is known." When Pharaoh heard of it, he sought to kill Moses, but Moses fled from Pharaoh and stayed in the land of Midian and sat down by a well. So, at the very beginning, what does it say Moses knows he is? It doesn't say it. So I'm reading so much into this text, and this is just take this for what it is. But I wonder how much guilt Moses had for what lifestyle he had. There's a lot of people that they know, hey, I know I'm this, but I live here. And so what does Moses, and it appears to me, what does Moses try to do to say, no, I'm one of the Hebrew people? He sees an Egyptian, probably not the first time he saw an Egyptian beat a slave, but he finally did something about it, and he killed the Egyptian. And then he saw two Hebrews fighting, and then the Hebrew calls him out on it. I just could only imagine the stress, the guilt, everything that he might have felt in that moment going into it, and then he hears the Hebrew says that, and he runs. And if I looked at the map correctly, going to Midian was further than him going to Israel with the Israelites. I mean, he left. He left and went far, far away to a place where there was no way for him to get caught. So that's where he meets this family. Now the priest of Midian had 7 daughters, and they came and drew water and filled the troughs to water their father's flocks. The shepherds came and drove them away, but Moses stood up and saved them and watered their flock. When they came home to their father Reuel, he said, "How is it that you have come home so soon today?" They said, "An Egyptian delivered us out of the land of the shepherds and even drew water for us and watered the flock." He said to his daughters, "Then where is he? Why have you left that man? Call him that he may eat bread." And Moses was content to dwell with the man. And he gave Moses his daughter Zipporah. She gave birth to a son, and he called his name Gershom. For he said, "I have been a sojourner in a foreign land." So, where we have Moses right now. Moses, born a Hebrew, grew up an Egyptian, and now is a foreigner in a foreign land. He is a man that went from nothing to royalty to becoming a shepherd. He has a son, he has a wife, but living in a way that he probably doesn't know or probably doesn't have a relationship with God. And we'll see that going in here in chapter 3. Okay, and this is where I want to go to today. Chapter 3. So I just want you to wrap your mind. Has anybody ever been there before? I know I have. Maybe not in the same exact, but how many of us have felt lost? Have felt we don't belong? And have just really felt like an outsider even though we've lived in the same place for so long? Probably most of us. Probably most of us. So chapter 3. Now Moses was keeping the flock of his father-in-law Jethro, the priest of Midian, and he led his flock to the west and side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. And the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire out of the midst of a bush. He looked, and behold, the bush was burning, yet it was not consumed. And Moses said, I will turn aside to see this great sight, why the bush is not burned. When the Lord saw that he turned aside to see God called to him out of the bush, Moses, Moses. And he said, Here I am. Then he said, Do not come near. Take your sandals off your feet, for the place on which you are standing is holy ground. And he said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look at God. So, Moses is doing his job, and he notices this weird thing over on the side, that this bush is burning, but the bush is on fire, but it's not burning up. So wrap your mind around that for a second. This is not a normal sight. This is something brand new. This is something shocking. And when it happens, he just turns and looks at it. He leaves everything he has, he turns and looks at it, and he walks over to it, and then the bush starts talking to him. And it says, one of the ones that we look at all the time, do not come near, take your sandals off your feet, for the place on which you are standing is holy ground. And he said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to see the face of God. So he knows who God is. He knows that this is strange. He is in awe. He's already in shock. All the stuff that has built up to this moment, and he's taking it all in. He's taking it in right now. Then the Lord said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people who are in Egypt, and have heard their cry because of their taskmasters. I know their sufferings, and I have come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians, and to bring them up out of the land to a good and broad land, a land flowing with milk and honey, to the place of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, the Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. And now, behold, the cry of the people of Israel has come to me. I have also seen the oppression with which the Egyptians oppressed them. Come, I will send you to Pharaoh, that you may bring my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt. That's a big job. That's a big job for somebody that doesn't really believe in himself, that doesn't know who he is, has been all over the place. God's calling Moses right now. So here's the first one. And I love it how even the first question is what it is. But Moses said to God, remember, this is the burning bush. This is the bush on fire. The thing that there's no rhyme or reason. This is not logical. A bush on fire that's not burning is talking to him. But Moses said to God, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the children of Israel out of Egypt? Who am I? In that question, that is a loaded question. What is that question saying? It sounds to me like it's a question of someone who feels unworthy, who doesn't feel like it is appropriate for him to be the one to go up against Egypt and take on Pharaoh. Sounds one to me that knows his past and is scared and is saying, really? God, out of all the people that you know, that you've seen, you're coming out here to Midian and asking me. And this is what God says to Moses. I will be with you, and this shall be a sign for you that I have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you shall serve God on this mountain. So God is giving God's saying who you are is that you're my child. And here's my sign. And it's really a promise. Is that I'm letting you see at the beginning, have the end in mind. The end in mind is saying, you're going to come back up here one day with the people of Israel, and we're going to worship, and you're going to worship. That's who you are. You are my child. Here's the next question. Then Moses said to God, if I come to the people and say to them, the God of your fathers has sent me to you, and they ask me, what is his name? What shall I say to them? Now, to be who we are right now, thousands of years later, and hear that question, that's an odd question. Because they're just asking, you're asking me what God's name is. Why is that such a big deal back then? Because the Israelites would have seen the Egyptian gods, and they would have known that there were hundreds of gods. So when Moses asked this question, what is your name? It's like, why are you, it just means to me, that's why I said what I said earlier. Moses, as of yet, does not know who God is. He doesn't know. And so, here's God's answer. God said to Moses, I am who I am. I know several of you have heard that before. This is God, I'm going to read this in the only Hebrew I know. God said to Moses, I'm Yahweh. That's what he says. And he said, say this to the people, I am has sent me to you. God also said to Moses, say this to the people of Israel, the Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob has sent me to you. This is my name forever, and thus I am to be remembered throughout all generations. Go and gather the elders of Israel together and say to them, the Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, of Isaac, and of Jacob has appeared to me, saying, I observed you and what has been done to you in Egypt, and I promise that I will bring you up out of the affliction of Egypt to the land of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, Hivites, and the Jebusites, a land flowing with milk and honey, and they will listen to your voice, and you and the elders of Israel shall go to the king of Egypt and say to him, the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, has met with us, and now please let us go on the journey. But the whole point behind this is that God is telling Moses, there is no other God equal to me. Tell them that I've been here from the beginning, and I've always existed, and I always will exist. I am the same God who is the father of your Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. All the stories, everything that you heard before, I am here now. And I will be leading you through this man, Moses. That's a powerful statement. That's a powerful statement to know that God is above all others. That's why when you take a look at the Ten Commandments, when it's because his name is also so awesome that nothing else can or will compare to him. Here's the next question, starting chapter 4. Then Moses answers, but behold, let's say I even say that. You gave a great speech, God. But they're not even going to listen, but they won't even listen to my voice. So what shall I do? And he told him, here are 3 things that you'll do. You can throw a staff down, and when he throws it down, it becomes a snake. Or you can put your hand in your cloak, pull it out, full of leprosy, put it back, and nothing. Or you can take water out of the Nile, pour it on the ground, and it turns into blood. 3 signs to show that God is with you. If they don't believe your words, here I'll show it by my actions. Then Lord, he says one more time, but Moses said, "O my Lord, I am not eloquent either in the past or since you have spoken to your servant, but I am slow of speech and of tongue." Then the Lord said, "Who has made man's mouth? Who makes him mute or deaf or seeing or blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Now therefore go, and I will be with your mouth and teach you what you shall speak." But he said, "O my Lord, please send someone else." Then the anger of the Lord was kindled against Moses, and he said, "Is there not Aaron your brother, the Levite? I know that he can speak well. Behold, he is coming out to meet you. When he sees you, he will be glad in his heart. You shall speak to him and put the words in his mouth, and I will be with your mouth and with his mouth, and he will teach you both what to do." This is the whole scene. If you go back through everything else in history, Moses is thought of to be one of the greatest leaders. But at this point, who is Moses? Moses is scared. Moses is frightened. Moses is nervous. And he's worried. His doubt, his insecurities, and he knows he's not good enough, nor is he strong enough to do this. Even with God telling him these things to his face, his self-doubt is so overwhelming that he needs someone to help him. God even gets frustrated with him. He's like, "I am who I am. I am the God who created this. I created your mouth. I can do everything for you." But Moses is still scared. So let's just take us now. There are so many times that we are like Moses. When I say we, I'm going to say me, that I am like Moses. I know what I'm supposed to do. I know what is right. I know that there might be challenges. I know I'm not worthy. And I know God is with me. But the problem is that I never see that God is with me. I don't see. I see my mistakes. I see my flaws. And I go to that point where I need to go to, or yet I run from it and I hide from it, and I'll just make excuses of why I don't want to do something. I've done it multiple times. Instead of listening to the burning bush. Because see, I would say most of us have probably grown up in a background where we know what's right and we know that God is there and we've seen Him work. But the reality, when the times get tough or we mess up, we completely look away from Him and look totally on us and make it all about us instead of making it about Him. See, God is the same God who took a man who was confused, who was guilty, who was a foreigner, and He said, "I'm going to take you, and you are going to lead these people out of Egypt. Moses was not. We're still talking about Moses 4,000 years later because of what God did. Is that not incredible? Is that not incredible that Moses' story is still here today? So think about now what God will and is and can do with you. Moses had to know God. Moses needed to know God was there. He needed to know that he was protected. He needed to know he was loved. He needed to know he was taken care of before he did that. So he needed to know who he was. And it's the same thing with us today. Who are we? Who am I? I am a child of Yahweh. I am a child who is loved and is known by our Creator. The one who knows the Moses and the Israelites and all the stories in the classics is the same God that knows me and knows you today just as well as he knew the characters back then. Where do I fit? I fit in the loving arms of a Savior. A Savior who knew me before I was born, that died for me, loves me, and wants to take care of me. And I matter because of God. And the same path that he took, the same God who loved them and took care of them, I matter because he loves me. There was a quote by Damon West today that he put on Twitter, and let me get to it real quick. Or X, I apologize. God will meet you wherever you are. This is especially relevant to those who have imprisoned themselves over fears, thoughts, and things. The power is inside you because his love is within you. When you go this week and you have those doubts, that's what you need to remember, is that God's love, the creator of the world, is with you, and his love and his power is within you. Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for who you are and what you have done for us. Lord, we do not feel worthy to be called your children, but know that you have loved us so much that you want us to be yours. Thank you for finding us. Thank you for giving us an identity. And thank you for making us yours. We love you. In your Son's name we pray. Amen.